Hey, folks, welcome to Eastmans Journal Podcast Edition. I'm your host, Ike Eastman. As always, I'm bringing you guests that have interesting stories and very genuine conversations. This today is no different. I sit down with Eastman's own Jim Huntsman from the Western Huntsman Podcast and learn a little bit about what makes Jim so unique. Not only that he grew up in central Utah and some funny stories about growing up and be looking for what the difference is today, hunting today in Utah versus when he was a kid. And it's significant. We also talk about some really interesting things that he loves, his favorite pastime, and who would give up a full ride scholarship to go be a jarhead. Well, Jim. So you'll have to listen to that story, as well as one of his TED Talks would be the Civil War and how it affected the U.S. So let's listen in on our conversation with Jim Huntsman from the Western Huntsman Podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Silencer Central. Silencer Central, thank you for supporting us. If you would like to support Silencer Central, if you have any interest in a silencer, which I encourage because it is a game changer in the field, check out silencercentral.com. They will walk you through the paperwork online, as well as they can ship that silencer directly to your doorstep. So check them out and tell them Ike sent you. Today's sponsor is Forever Barnwood. Guys, we have been using this in our renovation of our building here in Powell, Wyoming, and I am here to tell you it is amazing. They are a premier supplier of barnwood across the U.S. Their products come from fresh-cut Wisconsin white pine, which has been kiln-dried way below standard lumber and hand-processed into various products like barn doors, beams, flooring, and wall covering. This type of lumber product provides all of the advantage of reclaimed barnwood at a fraction of the cost, not to mention how easy it is to work with because it's straight lumber and it doesn't have all the waste. Their barnwood products are a renewable resource and come in a variety of widths and lengths, large sizes for countertops, beams, posts, stairs, and railing systems, as well as wall covering and everything else. Their prices are only a fraction of the cost elsewhere, and they can ship anywhere you need it. With their innovative barnwood products, you'll have the right piece at the right time for your special project. So check them out at yourforeverbarnwood.com. No matter what your project is, Forever has. With their innovative barnwood products, you'll have the right piece at the right time for your special project. So check them out at foreverbarnwood.com. And no matter what your project is, Forever Barnwood has you covered. Well, Jim, I appreciate you coming on. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Idaho?
No, I actually grew up in Utah. I grew
did?
up in, yeah, I did. I grew up, you remember where we were at for the Hunt Expo?
Yeah.
I grew up about an hour south of there.
Really?
And, yep. And so, I grew up mule deer hunting, grew up fishing and camping and all that kind of, rural Utah life that is, I guess, normal. I'm just going to ignore this sound thing and put it over there. There we go. But yeah, so that's where I grew up. I ended up in Idaho actually after I got out of the Marines. And so I've been here ever since.
So in Utah, you grew up mule deer hunting. So south of Salt Lake, an hour south of Salt Lake. What town is that? Like Spanish Forks?
Well, actually, I grew up in Utah, or I'm sorry, in Draper, Utah.
Okay.
And so Draper is now, if you go to the Salt Lake Valley, it's all together, right? Like,
yeah.
But when I was a kid, going to Salt Lake was like a big day trip thing, because we were just like tucked in into that South Mountain corner area of the Wasatch Front there, and it was all separated. There nothing but agricultural front until you got to like Sandy and then Murray and then Salt Lake, and so now it's all just combined. But my family also has like an alfalfa ranch down in central Utah. In fact, my grandpa's ranch has a stake in one of the pastures that marks the exact dead center of the state of Utah. And so I grew up down there hunting pheasants and deer and elk and whatever. And yeah, it was a good time. I had a great childhood.
So have you noticed, I've never got to ask this to somebody that grew up there hunting and fishing. Have you noticed the hunting change significantly in Utah?
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, it's way different than, when I was a kid, growing up, my first hunt, I wasn't even old enough to go hunting. I went with my dad. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and he had one of those old pop-up trailers. Those pop-up green tent trailers with nothing but tent. There's nothing in them, not even a heater. And so we'd light our
jumping
little
jack
lantern.
before jumping jack was famous, right?
Exactly. And he's still got the dang thing too. He put it down on the ranch and took the tent part out of it. And now it's like a utility trailer he hauls firewood with, And so anyway, we went out on this mule deer hunt, and my dad wasn't like big time into hunting. But he took me out on this trip, and we didn't get a deer that weekend, but I remember the nostalgia, the colors of the leaves and everything else. There were deer everywhere, but my dad was being pretty, selective, on this mule deer hunt. And we ended up going home empty handed, but, deer everywhere. So as I got into like high school, I noticed the amount of hunters in the field increased big time. Like opening day deer season for the rifle seasons, it was like orange everywhere on the mountains. And this is, mid 90s kind of thing. Orange everywhere on the mountains. It sounded like a D-Day invasion, shots going off everywhere. Like it was dangerous. And you stopped seeing a lot of deer. And, we tried to go elk hunting. My dad and other family, they just didn't quite know how to elk hunt, right? We hunted elk like we hunted mule deer. And so that's kind of how I grew up learning how to chase elk, and had to kind of relearn it later in life. But the regulations and the way that what's messed up now in the state of Utah for me is like, if I lived there and, my family's got all that property in Sanpete County, great mule deer country, in the foothills of like the Manti La Salle Mountains and this other area I'm not going to mention because I think that one's still over the counter. Anyway, it would be really hard for me to even get a tag to hunt my own land. And I get it. I guess the state of Utah, they're kind of going towards this more, quality
matters
versus quantity. Yeah. Trophy hunt. And that makes sense. I get it, because there's some great hunting there. I cut my teeth hunting those Manti La Salle mountains with a bow. It's where I learned how to bow hunt. It's that story I've told on my show a few times about how I was sitting there bow hunting for a mule deer way up. It was probably 9,800 feet, kind of at the bottom of this scree rock chute, overlooking this little teeny like drainage right at the headwaters of what this drainage would be. And I look down and I find this cool arrowhead, thousands of years old, that somebody, a native, had carved and left it there, and was probably hunting mule deer in that exact same spot thousands of years ago. And
that's surreal.
It's something I think about that a lot, because it's like, a lot of people ask, why are you so into hunting, and what is your deal with hunting? And the thing is this is to me, you're odd not being into hunting, because this is our primal connection, and that finding that arrowhead way up there like that, it proves that. And so, anyway, I got way off topic, buddy. To answer your question,
no, you didn't. You actually just answered one of my questions, Jim. We just talked about why do you hunt. You just answered that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like for me, it's not a choice why I hunt. It's not like I wake up and I'm, why am I going to hunt today?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's I have to go hunt because it's just part of who I am, and it's like I wouldn't be me without hunting. And for me, it's the only way I can reset and achieve this state of normalcy in my own mind, because things get so hectic. I own a roofing company. All the gray hair that you see is all either from my daughters or from my roofing company, and I can't believe I even have hair on the top of my head, and so all that stress builds up, and when I get up on the mountain, man, that it all goes away. And it doesn't matter if I get something, it all goes away. And I feel connected to the earth. I feel connected to God. I feel connected to my primal nature, that how God made me. And that's why I hunt. It's just like not even a question. I just do it.
That's so cool. So roofing company, I knew you were involved in a roofing company. I did not know you owned it, which is which is awesome. So you know the small business, struggles and making payroll every 2 weeks and all of that fun stuff. How long have you been in roofing? Is this a new adventure? Have you been doing it for a while?
Well, my company is newer. I started it a little over a year ago, but I've been in roofing on and off since I got out of the service. I actually, when I was going to college, I took a job with a roofing company to help pay my way, and I just kind of stayed in either roofing or HVAC. I've been involved in a lot of HVAC companies, and I've made this weird career out of coming into a smaller HVAC style company or roofing company and helping them grow. They're a $700,000 or $800,000 a year company, and I'd be on board to take them to $5 or $6 million,
Wow.
and then I'd move on because I really don't know how to take it past that point. My specialty was real small to a mid-sized company, and so anyway, when COVID happened, I'd been with the same roofing company for like 6 years at this point. And when COVID happened, I got this text from my boss saying, consider yourself laid off, go file for unemployment, but also, by the way, keep doing the business development thing, and I felt betrayed because I'd given everything to this company, and I was like what you'd consider a real company man, right?
Yeah.
And I just get this random text. He didn't even call me to tell me that because of COVID, I'm laid off. And it built this like pretty strong distrust in working for him. And I decided, I'm sick of like doing that and giving my soul every day to somebody else when I could do it myself. And I know how to do it. I've managed crews. I know how to do business development. I've built companies, and so I just started my own company. And
that's so cool. That's so cool. Where's it based out of? Is it based out of Northwest Montana?
Yeah. So I live in Heron, Montana, which is a little teeny town of 250 people. And Perfect. It puts me smack dab right in the middle of some really great market areas. So I serve Kalispell and Whitefish and Missoula, Montana. And then I serve Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint, Idaho, and Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and those areas. I'll dip my toes into Spokane, Washington a little bit, but they don't make it super easy over there for small businesses. So I try to avoid it. But
so what's the roofing company called?
Headwaters Roofing.
Okay, Headwaters. You guys do primarily like homes and businesses, small businesses. I assume you're not roofing McDonald's and Walmarts.
Shoot, I would.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. Cool. I've got a great crew that can. We've done a couple of schools, but mostly residential. Yeah, it's mainly residential, and that's kind of we really kind of have a great niche in residential metal.
Okay.
We do really good metal roofs, and that's kind of our bread and butter.
Which where you live is probably a lot of metal roofs because the snow load's significant there.
Yeah. Everybody likes metal around here, and it really is a better way to go with this climate. But shingles aren't a bad way either. But the metal just makes it so they never have to see my smiling face out there again. You
at least hope not, right?
Yeah, I hope not.
So grew up in Center, Utah. And high school, fishing, hunting, ranching, being the outdoors. I heard college, but what happened after high school?
Well, I don't know if I've ever said this on mine or anybody else's podcast, but I had almost a full ride scholarship as a drummer.
Drummer? Like in a band, like a marching band?
Yeah, I had a almost, again, it wasn't a full ride, but it was almost a full ride offer for music, and drums were my thing. At 18 years old, in my extensive wisdom, I decided I wanted to go shoot machine guns in the Marine Corps, and turned down the scholarship, and I did that instead.
I drum when you couldn't hear it later. Oh, that's
exactly.
So you went to and you didn't even go like, oh, I'm gonna go to the Army or Navy. You said I'm really gonna go in deep, and I'm gonna be in the Marine Corps.
Well, that's a funny story too. I was talking to all the recruiters, and I'd kind of I'd eliminated the Navy and I'd eliminated the Air Force, and I had it kind of boiled down to both the Army and the Marines. And the first time I spoke with the Marine recruiter, honestly, he kind of scared me. I'm like, man, I don't want to go to that kind of boot camp. Hell with that, and it sounded crazy. And back in the day, I don't know if they still do this, Ike, but back in the old days, the recruiters would come and set up booths in the high school cafeterias and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And talk to,
I remember that. Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So the Army guy was there, and I remember his name. His name was Sergeant Johnson. And he was there. He had his little booth. And I want to set this up. I don't want anybody to be offended if you're in the Army. This is my entire outlook on this. It's a fun rivalry, right? It's a really fun rivalry, but I don't look down upon any other service, because when you go to somewhere like Iraq and see it all come together, you see the necessity of all of them, right?
Right.
So, but back then, I'm standing there and I'm talking to Sergeant Johnson. And he's a little overweight, and his uniform was a little wrinkled and whatever. And in walks the Marine recruiter out of nowhere. He had his dress blues on, looks sharp as a tack. He walks right up to me, and there's everybody's kind of gathered around, the whole like commons area. And pardon my French, but he walked right up to me and looked at me, looked at the Army recruiter, looked back at me and said, "What are you doing talking to this guy, Huntsman? I know you're not a." And then he turned around and walked away. He knew exactly how to play to like an 18-year-old ego, right? I was
done that before.
Yeah. I was in the Marines. I was enlisted in the Marines to go to boot camp by the end of that week. It changed everything, that guy saying that to me. I did not want anybody to think that that's what I was, even though I don't think that that's, what you are if you join any other service by any means. But
what's funny, Jim? I've probably interviewed 3 or 4 people at least from each branch, and almost always the recruiting story is similar to this. It's always, well, I went in to go into the Navy and the guy wasn't there, or I went in to go to the Marines and the guy from the Army said something to me, because they're all in the same complex. He said something to me, and it's all very similar. That's just how they do it, I guess.
It's kind of how it works, man. I mean, I don't know. They kind of play off each other, and something eventually sticks. So
that's awesome. So you went into the Marine Corps. What'd you do in the Marine Corps?
I was a 0311 infantryman, and I was stationed with 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines out in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And it was all pre 9/11. So lots of training, lots of partying, lots of drinking. And then 9/11 happened and things got a little more serious. And we were actually deployed overseas in Djibouti, Africa, doing some anti-terrorist stuff. When they took us back to the ship, we'd been overseas for like 6 months. We thought we were going home.
Yeah.
And the captain comes over the intercom of the ship and says, "Well, I got bad news. We've got to go offload the Marines into Kuwait to go into Iraq." And we were like, we'd been in the desert of Djibouti, Africa. We didn't know that there was a buildup going on in Iraq in the winter of 2003, right? And so we're like, what's going on in Iraq? And we ended up being one of the first units to cross that line of departure and went into that initial invasion. And ended up being like the longest deployed unit since the Vietnam War and all sorts of stuff. Jeez. We got all sorts of medals out of it. Yeah.
Wow.
But with we were went in there with the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit, and we were in Iraq for a couple months, and then they finally said, "Okay, you guys have been overseas for a long time to go home," and sent us home.
Wow. That's amazing. So you were kind of a Forrest Gump moment. I was there when we invaded, and I was the point of the spear with this. That's very cool. Very cool.
And the irony of that whole thing, Ike, is the Iraq War started the same exact week I had hit my 4-year enlistment and was supposed to get out. And so I got stop lost and ended up over there.
You're like, wait, no, I was going home.
Yeah, wait. I had plans to go to Applebee's or something and live like a normal human.
Well,
that didn't work
that's
out.
awesome. Well, once again, thanks for your service. It sounds like
Thank you.
it sounds like it was. Well, you know what's interesting? I had somebody say this. I don't remember who it was. Somebody just said this to me recently. That the 2 years that the 4 years he was in the military, because he reenlisted, he was in the Navy. He said those 4 years, I grew personally more than any other time in my life. In fact, maybe the rest of it, period. He said,
Yeah.
I became who I am today because of those 4 years. Hot bunking in a ship for 6 months in the Pacific Ocean and just doing that stuff is who he was. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that I don't know exactly how to explain it to people who haven't done time in the military, but the 4 years because of the Iraq War, I spent almost 5 years in the Marines. Was by far the most memorable, most influential, and most impactful time of my life. I mean, I've been out for 21 years. Holy cow. So if I had a kid the year I got out, that kid would be old enough to drink beer now. That's how long I've been out.
You obviously don't have one of those kids.
No, they better not be. But that I know of. But yeah, I've been out for 21 plus years, and I think about it every day. I still think about my time in the Marines every day. There's not a day that goes by that it doesn't impact my life in some way. Yeah. And so, yeah, I would concur with what that guy said.
Wow, that's amazing. So, out of the Marines, an extra year before you could go to Applebee's. What did you use your influence and go to college? I guess.
Yeah, the GI Bill.
Yep, the GI. Yep.
Yeah. So off and on, I went to college, left college, went to college, left college. Used the GI Bill for most of it. I still ended up somehow in college debt because a lot of the GI Bill. Again, not a lot of wisdom coming from this side of the table here, Ike. A lot of that GI Bill went to whiskey and music, guitars and drums and chasing women. So it was a wild time in my life.
So do you still play the drums?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, they're sitting right here next to me. I love the drums.
That's awesome. My best friend's father-in-law is a drummer. And he's one of these guys that doesn't read music. He can just turn it on and start drumming, and he's built this awesome shop. Anyway, he has his thing. We go over there we were over there Friday after Thanksgiving and shooting skeet and trap and blowing up tannerite and just doing what nice. Kids do that are 45 years old. And he in this shop up above in a mezzanine, he's got a set of drums and a TV that does karaoke, and till wee hours in the morning he will drum himself to death playing so people can sing karaoke. And he doesn't know how to sing or doesn't know how to read music, but he's an unbelievable drummer. So it's
man,
fun.
You guys in Wyoming know how to party. That'd be my kind of thing right there. I'd even sing karaoke music for you.
You should come down for 4th of July when we have firework wars, and we literally give all the high school kids. We give them Roman candles and put them in my hayfield and let them shoot each other, making men out of them.
Putting a little hair on their chest. I love it.
Half of them go to the recruiter the next day.
Yeah, I'll bet they do. And the recruiter's like, man, the problem is you already blew your eardrums out. I don't know what to tell you.
What are all these black scars across your face? And whoever it was, thank God they made you wear safety glasses and gloves. But what's all the rest of this?
Oh yeah, that sounds like a good time. Between your big mule deer and your Wyoming parties, I better come down and see you guys.
Yep.
Oh, I need to come down and see the new office too.
Yeah, we just got it done. This is one of the studios. It's not completely done. I still have a bunch of stuff to hang. It's still a little echoey in here, so I got to deal with the sound stuff. But you got to come down and check it out for sure. You can come stay in the bunkhouse.
Bear hides, man. See the bear hide behind me? That keeps the echo down in here.
So
Those
I
work
have a
good.
bear hide at home. I just haven't bring it in to hang it. And
Oh,
that was the reason I did it. Yeah.
That's a little broken tine studio secret I learned at my last one.
Awesome. It's awesome.
Cool.
So went to college. Did you major in music? Did you major in other stuff?
No, I majored in
Campus
business
wildlife?
marketing. Business marketing is what I majored in, and I ended up working for a buddy's company for a little bit in construction and roofing, and left that and went into like estimating for different types of small contractors, fencing companies and HVAC companies, and roofing. And I don't know what year was that. About 2009, I accepted. No, that it would have been later, 2010 or 11 even. I accepted a job at a big roofing manufacturer out of Cleveland, Ohio, to kind of cover the Utah and Wyoming territory. So I moved down to Utah. Me and my wife, and both of my daughters were actually born in Utah, but we only made it in Utah about 3 years. And it had changed so much. All my old haunts that I used to go fish, like Strawberry Lake and Lake Powell, and the areas I used to hunt, were either tags were unachievable to get, or they were overcrowded, and I couldn't even, like, man, we went to Strawberry Lake once. This is a place I practically grew up at Strawberry Lake, and great cutthroat fishing. And anyway, we go up there to just fish from the bank. We couldn't even find a spot on the bank to fish. This is a great big lake too. It was just like, there were so many people, and it would take an hour to get anywhere in the Salt Lake Valley with all the traffic, and it just did not fit our lifestyle. And so my wife and I quit the job with that manufacturer, and we came back up to North Idaho. And we're here. We were in North Idaho until last year, and then we bought a place in Montana, and here we are in Montana.
So is your wife from Utah, or is she from Idaho?
Actually, she's from Utah. We grew up pretty close together.
Oh, wow.
And probably crossed trails many times, but we actually did not meet until we both lived in North Idaho. I played in a band, and she was the bartender at the venue that I was playing at, and that's how we met.
You're the reason guys get into bands. Like, man, I'm gonna find that hot waitress.
Yeah, that's what happened. She was the hottest waitress at the country club we were playing in, and I ended up, it took me like 5 tries, man. She turned me down. I had tickets to the rodeo, and I had this particular rodeo had like a suite section, the private little boxes where they'd bring you in your own, whatever drinks you wanted and all this. And she turned me down. She told me no, she wouldn't go.
And, oh my gosh.
Because she thought that I was, running around with too many different women because I was in a band. And I don't know if she wasn't that wrong. But like 5 attempts later, I finally got her to agree to go to dinner with me, and we've been together ever since. And that was like 2005.
Oh wow. So you guys have almost been married 20 years.
Yeah, man, we're getting close.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So college, and then got to working into construction and estimating. So actually, there's a question for you, and I've asked my buddy Jason, who owns Forever Barnwood, who he's one that helped us out with this building, and there's so much cool Forever Barnwood in this building. It's just unbelievable. But I asked him this. I'm curious to see what your answer is too. I said, I'm going to ask you before I tell you his answer. Is estimating really just shooting from the hip, and you've just done it so many times, lost your butt on a bunch of jobs and made money on other jobs, and you're just kind of like, it's got to be somewhere close to this? Or is there a real science to it?
That really depends on what you're estimating. So if you're estimating a 1 million square foot high school commercial re-roof, there is a science to it, and you have to know the science. If you're just throwing shingles up on a house, that's kind of guesstimation. That's more of a guesstimate. I don't know if that's even true. Again, it just depends on you basically know what the material is going to cost, right? You basically know what the labor is going to cost, but there are a lot of unknowns that pop up, and sometimes you could just cover them within the estimate you gave them. Other times you got to change order the customer. It's so dependent on the job. But I've been doing this a long time, and I still have surprises. I'll get a roof torn off and come to find out, we're 10 squares short of this and blah, blah, blah. And
there's 4 layers instead
the
of
job
2.
ends up, the job ends up costing me a fortune. I've got one right now that it cost me basically my entire month of September hunting this year, and many thousands of dollars. And so,
oh my gosh.
yeah, it's funny. Every once in a while, you find a customer when it's time to pay the invoice, they get abducted by aliens, and that's kind of what's happened here. So
You're kidding me. Just
no.
disappear.
Yeah, he's got a winter place in Arizona, and anyway, that's a big long drama. But I think that there is a lot of guessing that goes into estimates, and it just really depends. What's funny about it, though, Ike, is like the more complicated, and this is just the case for roofing. The more complicated it is, the more scientific it gets, and the more accurate you become. It's these little easy jobs that you think are just, whatever you have in your mind end up kind of biting you in the behind.
Yeah. Well, that's very similar to what he said. He said there's a lot of math to it, but at the end of the day, you're only as good as your history of doing this is.
Yeah.
Because you can't see everything. So you go, well, that's a funny whatever way they did that corner, that's going to be a problem. And so there's $200 or whatever, so it's a lot of a gut. That's pretty interesting. So how in the heck did you obviously moved back to North Idaho and now into Montana to hunt, but how in the hell did you get into podcasts and draw one hell of a following?
I was writing a hunting blog. I'd been writing this hunting blog, and I even started my own little website where I'd write these blogs on, how to understand mountain thermals and, just different hunting topics. I've always enjoyed writing, and I actually started doing that for the roofing industry. I was writing a roofing blog, and I know, right? Does that sound exciting or what? Do you want to read about shingles and how snow reacts to thermoplastic roofing materials? And it was all sorts of fun. So I was kind of doing that, and it was actually an idea that somebody triggered in me to write this roofing blog for our company website that'll help with search engine optimization and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I found that I really liked to write, and I liked hunting a lot more than I liked roofs, and so I started writing this blog, about hunting and different little articles. I'd write articles for like the Idaho magazine, and I think I don't remember if I got accepted into that one. I had a couple of hunting articles that went into like Bugle magazine. What were some of those? I can't remember. A lot of just random magazines like
Peterson's and
Eastern Oregon Archery magazine, things like that. And I'd get these. They'd pay me like $70 or something, and I'd be really happy about it. Anyway, I told you that I grew up trying to hunt elk. Like a mule deer, which doesn't work, by the way, for any of you listening.
Don't try that. It's not a winning strategy.
Don't try that at home if you're serious about notching a tag. And so I'd kind of taken this deep dive into going after archery elk while calling, and I really wanted to, because I loved, like, growing up. One of the things I didn't tell you, like, one of the ways I made money in high school is the county that the ranch is in would pay a $50 bounty on coyotes.
Okay.
And so that was how I got a lot of my gas money in high school. Is I'd go pile up coyotes in the back of my truck by calling them in and killing them. And I really enjoy calling animals. I don't care if it's a coyote or if it's a whitetail or if it's especially if it's a screaming bull elk. And so I was kind of taking this deep dive into learning how to call in elk and getting really good at it. And anyway, I went a few years of absolute utter failures, and I got up on the mountain I don't remember what year it was, but I called in this bull that came just in, the kind of call-in that just comes in on a string.
Mhm.
And he came out, he gave me a great shot. I put an arrow in him. He ran down this rock face thing and started tumbling and snapped his antlers off, a bunch of his
Oh my
antlers.
gosh.
So hence the name of my studio, the Broken Tine Studio. When I found that bull, I told my cousin Andrew that was with me, I'm going to start a podcast and talk about this stuff. This is exciting. I like this. I had just learned, Ike, what a podcast was. And I found it. I was listening to Dave Ramsey trying to, I want to, and I figured that I could listen to him anytime on my phone on this podcast thing. And so we were trying to get out of debt at the time and, do all this stuff. And so that's how I figured him out. And I figured out, there's hunting podcasts out there, and people actually like to talk about it and listen to it and all that kind of stuff. So I found old Broken Tines and named the studio the Broken Tines Studio over that bull. He's not in here right now because I want to paint before I hang him.
Okay.
But I still have him, and he's just a funky. He's got half on one side and about 3/4 of his antlers on the other side. And he's like a 270 class bull, nothing huge.
Yeah, and, but that's a great story and a great, founding.
Yeah, man. It was my first archery bull too.
And Dave Ramsey, which for those of you who haven't listened to Dave Ramsey, if nothing else, it's like going to the state fair for your own life, because you listen to Dave Ramsey's his regular podcast. He's got a business one too, but his regular Dave Ramsey podcast. He interviews people, call in and ask him questions about their own finances, and I'm telling you. You want to feel better about your own finances? Listen to this a couple of times because they're funny.
That's no kidding. And I like when they call them and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about adding this extra credit card to all my 17 other credit cards because it's got a lower interest rate, and I'd like to put my car on it. And what do you think about that? Like you can't call Dave Ramsey and ask him advice about getting into more debt. It's hilarious, but
he gives great advice. We've been listening to him, or we started listening to him in 2005, and I've been to a couple of his live events. And
that'd be fun.
And I run my business the way that he runs his business, and it's a lot of fun. But I'll tell you what, it is entertaining. Either entertaining or scary. If you listen to his podcast and go, I don't see the problem with it, you should be scared. Number one. Number two, if you're listening to that podcast and go, I'm in worse shape than that person, then you need some help.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it's like anything,
cars on credit cards. You're a problem.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. People out there, I apply it to my business too, like you were talking about. And
this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Eberly Stock. Eberly Stock is one of my favorite backpacks. Now, I've been wearing their backpack for almost 20 years. They have lightweight backpacks. They have modular backpacks, everything from their main frame, which is just a frame pack that you can put bags on. They have these cool outside called bat wings that you can use. So check them out at eberlystock.com and make sure you tell them Ike sent you. This episode is sponsored by Secure-It, the gun storage system. Have you ever wondered the best way to store your guns, ammo, and actually all your valuables? There is a fine line between safety and accessibility. There's also something to be said about being able to customize your safe for your needs. If you're storing long guns, handguns, ammo, or just need a wall to hang your equipment on, Secure-It has your back. They have cabinets, rooms, and everything in between. Secure-It.
My guys are paid way better than what my competitors pay their guys, but yet my contract prices, I'm kicking my competitors' teeth in, man.
Really?
I'm beating their price like crazy because I don't go out and finance $100,000 trucks and put $10,000 worth of logos all over them and rent office space I don't need and hire people that I don't need answering phones because I know how to answer my own phone. And, all these things that just like pump up that overhead.
Yeah.
I'm just kicking their teeth in price wise, and I'm probably way more profitable than them too, because I run around in a fully paid for $15,000 F-150 that
Yep.
I bought cash. That's what I run around and put my miles in, and it works. And
Yep.
so, yeah, it's great lessons out of that whole program.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So, so you got into podcasts, and how long have you been doing it? Because you've been working with us 3 or 4, coming on 3 years, but you've been doing this for like 10, haven't you?
No, this December, this Christmas Eve is going to be the 5-year anniversary.
Oh, wow. I
Western
didn't know
Huntsman.
that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you got a hell of a following. I mean, out of all the guys that we work with, out of the podcast, I mean, you're in the top 3 every single time. And it's fun to watch the thing. And I've said this a bunch, for those of you that haven't listened to the Western Huntsman podcast, go listen to it, because Jim's not afraid to ask questions to people. And I mean, the hard questions. What's the deal? Have you got the wolf lady on yet?
Man, I've been trying to get the wolf lady. No, which wolf lady? We might.
I don't know. I just know there's a wolf lady. Tell us the story.
No, there's all sorts of wolf ladies out there that act like, they will not come on my show because I'm talking about the anti-wolf hunting, activists that think that wolves should be put on a pedestal above all other species on the landscape. And I follow them all on Instagram. They've all ended up slowly started blocking me, but because I'll respond to their emotionally driven posts that they put about how terrible hunting and wildlife management through hunting for wolves is. And so I've tried to get them all on the show. They all say the same thing. Oh, I don't think that would serve anybody any good. No, it actually would. You're trying to propagate information that is totally false because you're emotionally intoxicated about a species that didn't exist on the landscape 20 some odd years ago. And you think that there's no repercussions to having them released in more states. And you think that they should be still on the endangered species list, despite the fact that in the Northern Rocky Mountain region, they are 10 times exceeded the ESA requirement to even have them released. So you want to talk about how they need your protection, and you want to fool people into donating to your cause to so-called save the wolves that don't need saving, but yet you won't defend it with somebody who might have an adversarial opinion about it. And I think that that's BS. I think that if you're going to have some crazy opinion and spew a bunch of emotional falsehoods to unsuspecting people that are, because believe it or not everybody's like you and I that are way into hunting, and we pay attention to wildlife management and conservation issues and all these things that go into keeping these populations healthy. Not everybody's like that. Most people, they don't have a clue. So they see some post on Instagram saying, we need your help saving the wolves. The hunters are going to kill them. They're coming out of the Yellowstone Park and they're going to kill all the wolves. Idaho's looking to reduce them by 90% and blah, blah, blah. None of that is true. None of that is even feasible. Yeah. And so, but they get people like that to donate money to their cause, and they make these ludicrous incomes out of kind of placating to these emotional folks out there that think that they're doing something good, when the reality is the wolves don't need anybody's help. They do just fine on their own.
It's a complete sob story to generate money for organizations that overpay their people and use their funds to market to other people to get more funds. It is a giant fraud game. So I had this conversation with somebody just recently. Well, you and I had a conversation with the guys down in Colorado with the mountain lion trophy hunting.
Yeah, with Ed and Jim Heffelfinger
and those guys said it perfectly. Though, if you donate to those organizations, none of that money goes to the ground. It's not like they're using that money to save the wolves. They're using that money to market to other people, to use their money to market to other people so that they can hire more people and pay them for marketing to other people. It's just a big giant snowball of fraud. It's bullshit. Whereas
it's so crazy. Yeah.
Actually put money on the ground, every single Pittman Robertson money comes from firearms, from weapons, and that money goes to the ground. These states use that money to manage grizzly bears, to manage the wolves, to manage everything. It's our money that's doing it.
What did that conservation mule deer tag at the expo last year go for? Do you remember?
I think last year was 325. The year before that was 725.
725. That's the number I had in my mind, because people need to realize $725,000. Think about that amount of money. Do you know what I could do with $725,000? There is a ranch for sale up the road.
Yep.
And I want that ranch, and that 725 wouldn't even touch it.
No.
Right. And so the ranch is out of the question. But think about, for the average person, how much money $725,000 is. Now consider the fact that, what's her name? Kitty Black or something, Kitty Block, that is the CEO of PETA.
Yeah.
She makes $750,000 a year from a freaking nonprofit organization. I'm sorry. When you, that is just the salary. You're not, that is, we're not talking about bonuses and other forms of compensation. So where is all that money going? Like, when the thing is if you donated $500 to the Humane Society of the United States for some anti-hunting initiative that they have or whatever, my $30 deer tag does more for wildlife management and conservation than your $500 to PETA or the Humane Society of the United States or Center for Biological Diversity. Those dollars actually go to something tangible from the hunting community.
And it's not just the deer tags. You were talking about conservation money. So that's $750,000 that guy paid for one deer. That all but 10% of that goes to that state, and they use it to manage the deer. I was just talking to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation 2 weeks ago, and they just broke 9 million acres opened up to public land access through Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. That's a huge number. Name me a public land advocacy group that has 9 million acres underneath their belt. That's like 4 times or 3 times the size of Yellowstone Park, for God's sakes.
And we have to understand what the benefit to the hunting community for that is, outside of just access to hunt. You have to understand that is now open to hunters who are actual stakeholders in the well-being of wildlife, accessing that land, hunting that land, clearing out the bad genes within those species, and managing those herds so that they're healthy, they're not overpopulated, they're not moving into winter ranges on highways and freeways and trains and airports and reservoirs, wherever else that is dangerous for these animals to be. That money is coming from people that actually care, because I don't care what any anti-hunting activist says. My love for these animals and for this wildlife and my stake in their well-being is far greater than their emotional need to be crazy cat ladies sitting in an apartment in Los Angeles or something, donating $20 to the Humane Society that goes to some lady's CEO ludicrous salary that does nothing for wildlife management. I was trying to find out what the Humane Society of the United States actually did for wildlife. It's really hard to find. They saved some dogs, domestic dogs, from getting coronavirus, apparently. And they saved some minks from becoming fur coats on a farm.
Oh my
Wildlife
gosh.
management does not show up anywhere. And so for them to go in and advocate for, like, the state of California to close their bear hunting seasons down is like they're not even in the same sphere. They're not in the same. They're not on the same planet from the standpoint of what people think that money is doing versus what that money is actually doing. And I think that, in my opinion, that's called a scam. You're scamming people. And I wasn't speaking from a place of like hate when I said crazy cat lady in downtown Los Angeles. What I'm speaking to is that's the type of person that is really susceptible to seeing some ad at 10 o'clock at night, sitting on the couch with 300 cats running around, and she's like, oh man, I need to save those wolves in Wyoming and in Montana and Idaho. because they're just getting slaughtered by those evil, nasty hunters that get out there and they shoot them by the tens and fill up their pickup trucks with them. And what they don't understand is wolf hunters have a success rate of less than half of 1%.
Yeah.
And it is not that easy to go kill a wolf. And so the wildlife management that does take place, mostly through trapping for wolves, that is actually effective, roughly around 25 to 30% success rate. That is key. That is actually still less than the 40% reproduction rate of a wolf. Yeah. And so but try to respond to that to like a tweet, like somebody puts out a tweet. Hey, wolf hunting is evil. We need to save the wolves. Donate here. Here's the link. Try to go into the comments and come up with a way to strike a motion against that without using 500 words, and have somebody actually read all of that without their eyes glazing over. So the fight is really not in our favor. It's an uphill battle, but we've got to figure out a way to do it.
Well, as we spend money on actually managing the wolves, the other side is spending money on marketing to get more money to bring more people to their side of the argument. It's an uphill battle, because if we took all the money that we are spending on managing wolves, we too could have a commercial on late night TV talking about how hunting is management, and if you don't cut your grass, it's going to go rogue and you won't have grass in 3 years. If you don't manage your garden, if you don't manage, I use this all the time, especially because I have two girls like you do, right? Mine are 12 and 14. I understand. If they don't cut their hair ever, it becomes a disaster. It needs to be managed. It needs to be groomed. You have to cut the old and the dead and the hard out and manage that stuff. It's no different with wildlife. It's a living, breathing thing. If you don't manage it, it will go away. And if you don't put a dollar value on it, there's no reason to manage it. And that's that's the North American model.
Yep, exactly. That's part of the North American model, and it's the thing that's another. You make a really good point. Like when you're talking about like the North American model of wildlife conservation, again, most hunters, they hear that name, the North American model of wildlife conservation, their eyes start glazing over. They don't care.
Oh, here we go. We're gonna get preached to.
They want to talk about the 194-inch class mule deer that went down, or whatever. And so it's really hard to even get hunters to be enthusiastic about being involved in this conversation, because, most of us have full-time jobs, and we're trying to plan our next big elk hunt or mule deer hunt or whatever, and trying to hone our skills with our new bow and buy that new pack or that new, set of camo, whatever. There's a lot of things that we're focused on, but what we're not focused on is things like the North American model of wildlife conservation that has been the most successful in the history of the planet,
right?
In terms of wildlife management, and what those principles, how they relate to how we can fight these anti-hunters that are trying to end this lifestyle. Because, and I've said this a million times on my show, hunting for me is not a hobby. Like it's my lifestyle. We homestead here in Northwest Montana. We grow and we kill almost everything that we eat. We don't spend a lot of money at the grocery store. That's not true. Sometimes I go to Costco and I'm a sucker for some of that junk food every once in a while. I'll get a
buy
thing
the 800 pounds of chocolate.
Yeah, my wife, she'll get all mad at me. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's the crazy election year. We got to be stocked up. And she's like, what? Stocked up on corn dogs? I don't think so. That's a bad idea.
My wife hates when I go to Costco. She goes, I hate going to Costco with you because you want to walk down every single aisle. I just go in there with a list. I'm like, yeah, I go in there for a box of Q-tips and walk out with $800 worth of crap.
I know, I do too. They have some good deals in there. So come on. And, if whatever, I like going. But
there's a shameless plug for Costco. They're not a sponsor.
There you go.
Yet.
They should. I don't know why Costco is not sponsored the show, but the point is there's a lot of people that have real stake in the game, and they have real consequences when wildlife management goes south for them, and we're getting controlled by people that don't actually have stake in the game.
Right.
If you live in downtown Denver, releasing wolves into Colorado that you will never see has no actual real consequence on you, but you think you're doing a good deed by voting in favor of it. And the problem is you're not that rancher in the foothills of those mountains that are losing thousands of dollars in livestock because of these wolves. Not that I don't know that that's happening yet, but
it is. It's starting to happen now.
Yeah.
But there's a glimmer of hope, and I don't want to be constantly saying the doom and gloom, but there's a glimmer of hope. And I'm telling you, this year, with the electional process, and they didn't pass that law to outlaw hunting in Colorado, which it was narrow, it was close, but there's still, I think
they did pull it off.
Yeah, they did pull it off, but there's still 1 million people in Colorado that don't understand. They don't get it. They still voted for it.
Yeah. And they have no consequence. That's what's scary. That's why ballot box biology is such a dangerous game.
It is.
Because you're having, it's like, you have people that they read one headline and so they're going to vote for this candidate for president. What they don't know is they're voting against themselves because now their taxes are going to go up, their gas price is going to go up, their inflation is going to go up, all these things. But they don't actually know what the difference between the two candidates is.
Right.
They just have an emotional draw to do that. And that's what ballot box biology is. These people have no idea the repercussions. In the state of Colorado, the greatest elk population in the American West, and you want to introduce wolves, and you think that there's no consequence of that, and what's going to happen to the rest of the wildlife. But let's all go vote on it. But to your point there, that Dan Gates, he deserves a lot of credit because I think that he worked some serious magic and got that. I can't remember the name of the initiative or the proposal, but eliminating basically any kind of cat hunting in the state of Colorado, and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
So kind of circle back to, we kind of get a little off track, but honestly, to circle back what my point is if you haven't listened to Jim's podcast, do that, because he's tackling things just like that. Plus you have some really cool things. You have your Elk September, right?
School of September, man. You were pumping up my podcast earlier saying it's been wildly successful. It wasn't me. I got really good guests and called it School of September, and it's the most popular thing that the show has ever done.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's a great listen. I even learned some stuff, because you can always learn from people, right? Somebody has done something accidentally, maybe, that you go, oh crap, that's a really good idea. I'm going to try that, and then it'll work. So you always, even if you're a top-notch elk guy or mule deer guy or whatever, listen to some of that stuff, because you're gonna find easier ways, better ways, more successful ways to use it. So School September is awesome. Lots of good guests, Jim. I've been really impressed with your guest list. Who are some of the people that you've got out on your podcast right now? Some of the interesting conversations.
Well, let me circle back to real quick. That School of September that I wanted to discuss is, I look at it, it's a mental toolbox, and everybody, like when I get Brian Barney, for example, on for School of September, every hunter on the planet could learn something from Brian Barney, right? Everybody on the planet could learn something from Dan Picard. Yeah. You get those kind of caliber of bow hunters on the show to discuss what they do. Everybody's going to be able to kind of take a piece of that and put it in their own mental toolbox. So when the situation on the mountain arrives, they're going to know what to do. And that was kind of the purpose of it. And it's worked really well. Again, it's not me making the show great. It's those guests that come on that are willing to share their knowledge. And I love doing that. It's my favorite part of doing the podcast. But I do have some really good guests coming up, man. In fact, I'm really excited. I'm getting my pastor on the show, and I made this post the other day where, we were talking about basically some of the best hunters that you'll ever meet in your life are the guys that nobody knows, right? They don't have social media. They don't put stuff on YouTube. They don't do any of that. But these guys are
most of the time
usually on purpose. And it's not necessarily just a lack of sophistication. I mean, I am the least sophisticated individual you'll ever meet, and I still post stuff on Instagram. And so it's these guys that I always have like this wild respect for. And my pastor is one of those guys. He's a hunting guide, and he's a really effective hunter. And I actually want to get him on and just kind of pick his brain about elk hunting, because man, he's just a consistent freaking elk hunter. And he's the kind of guy I can learn from every time. And he's been guiding a lot longer than I have too. So it's like, he's just got a lot of experience, but, yeah, the conversations kind of on this show kind of go from, or on my show, I try to make it real hunting, tactical, discussion oriented going into elk season. And then after, the conversation changes a lot more to, what do we as hunters need to do to make sure that we have a future of hunting, and make sure we have these animals on the landscape and public land access and things like that just, guys like me worry about when it comes to the future of hunting.
Yeah. And you do a wonderful job with it. Obviously you and I share a couple good sponsors. We currently have Savage together, right? We got, I believe, Loophole our new one, right?
Yeah, we got Loophole, man. I'm excited about that one.
Cool?
I've been using it for years. So
the old gold ring.
Yeah, yes, sir. It's always exciting when a sponsor comes on board and it's something that you like already love. You know what I mean? And that's a big deal. Loophole's a great product, and I love American made.
Yeah, American made, family owned. American company that makes unbelievable products and has for generations, man. My dad was using Leupold when he was a kid. I mean, these are phenomenal products, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Everything from their rifle scopes to the range finding binos. I personally love their sunglasses. I wear them every day. I love their sunglasses.
See, I need to get a pair of those. I haven't gotten the sunglasses yet.
I'll ship you a pair.
Oh yeah, you promise?
I will do it as soon as we're done here. I will ship you a pair.
That'd be exciting, man.
I also will send you a silver coin that is an Ike Eastman Eastman's Journal Podcast coin. I'll give you one of those too.
Oh, right on.
Silver. Don't bite it. It's real silver. So
okay.
It's worth about nothing right now, but it's fun.
That's really cool. That's a good idea. See, I'm such a cheapskate. My guests don't ever get anything on coming on my show.
they get a serious dose of entertainment.
And they usually catch a lot of flack for some of the things they say. That's about it.
Oh, that's awesome. So
really
you answered out of all the questions that I have. I always have the 3 questions. We talked about why you hunt, and it didn't take long for you to go down that rabbit hole on your own. One of the other ones is, what are you going to be thinking about on your deathbed? What's important to Jim Huntsman?
When you ask me that, my first thought is like the preservation of certain things. And what I mean by that, I don't mean like preservation of animals from the anti-hunting standpoint, right? I mean the preservation of traditional things. And so I want things passed down. So like, I guess another way to answer that is I want my daughters to value things like American freedom and founding principles and a love for God. I want them to value things like hunting and the ability to have that self-reliance mentality and go up on the mountain and acquire the meat that'll get them through the winter or whatever. Like my daughters both got great bucks this year. My youngest, Ike, I meant to tell you this. My youngest got this spike.
Yeah.
And it was like bigger bodied than my older daughter's 3.5-year-old whitetail she killed with her bow. Yeah, it was a crazy big spike.
Was he a stag?
I don't know. I don't know if it was like I didn't really pay attention because so they were hunting. I'm a guide. I guide during November, and I was gone guiding. She kills this buck. I get home. It's dark. They don't know how to gut these deer, so I gutted the deer for her and got it hung, got the hide off, all that. And I was just tired. It was cold. I didn't really pay much attention. But a few days later, when I was done guiding, I start butchering this deer, and I'm like, "You got to be kidding!" Like the rear quarters, we're getting a ton of freaking meat off of this thing. And so, and then my other daughter kills this big 6x4, 3.5-year-old great whitetail, smokes them with her bow. I get that thing home, and I'm not kidding you, man. The 1/4 of meat off of that spike was almost more meat than the bigger, older, more mature buck. So anyway, I got off topic there, but
Well,
that's the
go ahead.
stuff I value. I want them to value that and think of me like when I'm on my deathbed, did I do enough to preserve the tradition of hunting, the tradition of self-reliance, the American grittiness and toughness to be a person that dictates your own destiny and not somebody who just wants everybody else to provide something for them to get their way through life.
Yeah, that's great. The preservation of tradition and values, that's fantastic. So the last question I have for you, and this will be because you have a very broad sense of interest. Is one of the things I love about you is everything from construction to hunting to all sorts of things. If you were able to do a TED Talk and you got the opportunity, what would you do a TED Talk on? What would you be so passionate about that guys would turn to you as an expert on the subject?
There's two things. I would love to do a TED Talk to the general public of the American society that we live in now, and offer some reality as to what hunting actually is, and show them that it's not the Hollywood version or the activist version of a bunch of even though I am a hillbilly and a redneck, but it's not a bunch of drunk hillbilly and drunk rednecks going out there shooting things for the sake of shooting stuff. That there's real science behind it, and there's real passion behind it, and there's real honor in the hunting community and what we do to preserve this tradition. I'd love to give a talk on that. It's totally random, but I'm a huge Civil War nut, and I would love to give a TED Talk on some of the causes and effects of the Civil War. I can go on about that all day.
So what's your biggest statement on the Civil War?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think the magnitude of the consequences that came out of the Civil War would be something that I'd love to talk about, but also the causes of the Civil War, the mentality of the people during the Civil War. When like people like to compare things in a modern day context that were not applicable in those days, if that makes sense. And so you can't judge it, because you're going to have a bunch of people 150, 200 years from now that are going to be judging you for something you're doing. But you think it's okay to do that to those folks back then. And it's not like a defense of anything, but the cause and effect of the Civil War, the technology that came out of the Civil War and how it affected everybody's lives. I love it's such, for generations, it's still affecting people. And it's so, there's so many layers to it that I don't know why I geek out on it so much, Ike, but I do. I listen to Civil War podcasts as much as I do hunting podcasts. So,
have you dove into that on one of your podcasts?
It's come up a few times. Yeah. I don't remember which episodes, but it's definitely come up.
I would be really curious. Maybe I'll have you come back on here, and we'll just talk for an hour about the Civil War and its repercussions and magnitude.
I'd love
and
to.
what it's done to our society in the world, not just the U.S., but the world. Period.
Oh yeah, I mean, think about one little thing in 1862, the Merrimack versus the Monitor, those first two iron ships that collided in Virginia and fought to basically a standstill. The entire world watched that and had to go home and tell them that their entire fleet of naval vessels was completely obsolete as of today. Just things like that changed the world. I just, people don't understand the magnitude of some of that came out of that war, that time period in our history.
That's crazy
stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. Well, Jim, once again, I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us, sharing your story, sharing what you're passionate about, drumming and the Civil War and hunting. and hunters' rights, and of course the preservation of hunting. And I just appreciate you doing that. Appreciate what you're doing on your podcast. Keep that stuff up. You're teaching, I think the more people we can teach, the more people we can get engaged in this, the longer it is going to be preserved for our kids and our grandkids and generations beyond that. So thank you very much.
Couldn't agree more. And thank you. Thanks for doing what you do and carrying on. I am in love with this American story that makes up what Eastmans is and the legacy that it is. And so just keep doing what you're doing, because it really is. This is the Eastmans story is what makes America this great place where these dreams can come true, and you can pass those dreams down, and it's just a great thing, man. It's a great legacy.
Yeah, well, thank you. It is one example of the American dream, and it's been
yes,
fun.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that was a fun podcast, folks. Jim is obviously a character. He's obviously super passionate about a ton of different things. I hope we get to talk a little bit more about the Civil War. I think that would be really entertaining. I think he brings a unique set of perspectives. He also brings some cool ideas on hunting and his School of September. So I appreciate you coming along. And until next time, we'll see you right here on Eastman's Journal Podcast Edition.